Let me continue with the theme of what's happening on the ground. And I'm absolutely thrilled to have with us Ms. Thinzar Shunlei Yi, who is not only going to be very generous with her insights, but is already very generous with waking up very early to be able to do the event. So enormous gratitude for that as well. Ms. Shunlei Yi is well known around the world for her tireless activism for peace and justice in Myanmar, particularly in the ongoing civil war. From 2012 to 2016, she co-organized and led the nationwide various regional forums in Myanmar, as well as the National Youth Development Policy process. She was also the first female coordinator of the National Youth Congress and the two-term president of the Yangon Youth Network. Currently, she leads, she's an advocacy lead at the Asian Youth Peace Network, and she also works with the Action Committee for Democracy Development. In 2016, Ms. Shunlei received the US State Department Award as Emerging Young Leader, and in 2012, she also received the Women of the Future of Southeast Asia Award. And she's also one of the Obama Foundation's inaugural selected Obama leaders for Asia Pacific. Lastly, I should mention that Ms. Shunlei Yi co-founded the Under 30 TV show in Mizima TV, where she serves as the show's weekly host. Thinzar, we started talking about the burden that communities in Myanmar are bearing, having to deal both with being deprived of having their voices counted in the political process of democracy, but also now facing a very difficult civil war, and something that, of course, the ethnic minority communities really have dealt with since across much of the 20th as well as 21st century. I would love to get from the very ground perspective about what are the key concerns for people, the state of the resistance groups, the state of repression, human rights, and just the local picture.
Thank you, Professor, and thank you so much for having me today. So as a civil society actor, as an activist for human rights and democracy, after the coup, we gathered among ourselves and we formed a General Strike Committee. So as a Foreign Affairs Committee members of the General Strike Committee, I also sit in the National Unity Consultative Council in a different joint coordination committees. And at the same time, as ACDD coordinator, I've been working together with the farmers worker. We are the 14 networks across the whole country, and I'm the only one outside the country as an advocacy person, so I can talk to you. So on behalf of all these coalition and ground strike members, I would like to share, before I explain what is going on the ground, we want you to know that why we are doing what we are doing. I think that's very important. So today marks 772 days since the brutal coup attempt in our country. And today in this early morning, I've woken up to honor our people by continuing to revolt against military rule in Myanmar. Every day, we must celebrate the undoubted spirits, relentless power, and brave resilience of the Myanmar people marching toward the federal democracy. So the coup attempt has awakened all of us who had almost come to accept the 2008 constitution, a constitution mainly drafted by the military and which guaranteed impunity for its countless past crimes. I walk the path paved by the 2008 constitution when I began my journey as an activist. I got to know it on the ground, in the street, in parliament, discussing it on TV, campaigning against it, using it to promote electoral rights, and trying to widen its scope. I led advocacy for the first national youth policy development process in Myanmar. In 2016, I also organized the first public hearing in the parliament. to remove the gas registration law. And I brought villagers, administrators, and grassroots activists to parliament to push for administrative reform. After 10 years of advocacy in the 2020 election, I couldn't help but boycott it. I boycotted it. And the 2008 constitution at its base. I did not cast my vote, and I wasn't alone. We knew too well that consequences of the path we were walking under the military roadmaps. We had a strong sense that our country should not be designed like this. And Myanmar nation building process has just started only after the people of Myanmar launched Spring Revolution. I would say I was doubtful and suspicious with many thoughts about people commitment or passion for change, because we have seen ongoing genocide in the country, and I thought nothing else could go wrong than this in this country or in the world. Now we have an opportunity to reflect our past mistakes and fix them, and then rebuild the nation, the country. So the goal of this revolution, this resistance, can no longer be the naive dream of oneness. From now on, we must appreciate Myanmar's diversity, and we must live in harmony as a federal state. We don't need to be one, just one to fight them or to fight the junta. We can be ourselves and keep our unique identities. That's who we are, and that's our strengths. Myanmar's situation is not getting better as the military state resists abandoning its coup plan, clinging to hope in the 2008 constitution. They will only help them hang on and consolidate their power. Last Saturday, the Myanmar army killed 30 civilians and 3 Buddhist men at the monastery in Nanheng village in Pinlaung township in Shan State. Earlier that day at around 11 a.m., the army carried out airstrikes and shelling on the village, where all refugees were reported to be shelling, burning down around 50 houses. The life of the refugees are also at risk. The arrest cases are also growing in India borders, in Manipur, in different states, and also in the Thailand's border, where now we are seeing more and more neighboring countries cooperating with the Myanmar junta, including India. India has been legitimizing junta since day one by sending their ambassador, also sending their arms, weapons. Even in the last phase, they've been training Myanmar Election Commission in the Myanmar junta's sham election. So in addition to abandoning 2008 constitution, we must cut into the military revenue streams. The military has brought countless weapons with the people tax act, and they are quite resourceful with the gas and the profit they gained during the 10-year so-called democratic transition. Myanmar natural resources, also infrastructure, are now seized by the military. After committing genocide in the last 6 years against the Rohingya population, now they are committing war crimes, crimes against humanity, and massacre against every other ethnic population. And there is a call for the to stop listening to disinformation from gas company and allowing them to fund the junta and its atrocity and its war on the Myanmar people by the Myanmar civil society and advocacy groups for the sanction on MOGE, Myanmar Oil and Gas Enterprise. And they've been calling to enact sanction that divert the revenue into escrow account, and also they've been encouraging U.S. government to work together with the Thai government to ensure compliance with the sanction. At the same time, in Myanmar, inside the country, every day we have non-violent political defiance and different actions also happening in the large scale in different places in Myanmar. Civil society, like my own organization, like ACDD, they all remain inside, and they are organizing the ground to mobilize more activities and to heal the souls of the communities and the people, and to educate the communities on resilience and resistance. ground strikes stay happening across country, and the women are fighting in the front line in the battle, also in the household against the dictatorship and patriarchy. When you can imagine when the houses are burned down, the military raid in the village, they burn down all the houses in the villages, and then people are displaced after some time, and then they came back and to rebuild their houses and restore the spaces. So this has been happening. That's why we are seeing internal displacement in a large scale in the country, because they keep reminding people like me and you that people belong to the country. And we are everywhere and we are too many. And this generation is bringing change. So I will stop here and we'll share more in the second round. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for the very powerful comments, and also enormous kudos and admiration for the very impressive work that you and your colleagues are doing under extremely difficult circumstances. You know, you spoke about living in a federal state. That's, of course, something that has been long a difficult challenge and issue in Myanmar over many decades. What is the view of you, your fellow activists, your fellow resistance activists on how do we get out of the situation?
Thank you, Vanda, and for all of your comments in the first round as well. So as a young generations, you know, and as a woman, I've been since the revolution started, now evolved into more full-blown revolution. It was not just anti-coup resistance. It was not just protest somewhere there. It's now turning into revolution. When we talk about revolution, that means we are changing the system, political system. When we talk about revolution, when we name it as a revolution, it's not just armed resistance. It's also political resistance. It's also ideological resistance, ideological revolution. So we are looking into changing people's mindset out of this struggle. And this is already happening. And that's what we think take to 2 years onwards. We have gained a lot on the way in the process compared to what we have gained in the past 10 years in terms of political advancement, not in terms of economic benefits. That's what I think I'm stay hopeful with what we have right now. For example, Federal Democracy Charter is no more 2000 Constitution. Federal Democracy Charter or NUCC or NUG, it was the first ever dialogue ever happened between different ethnic groups, between different political stakeholders, without military shadow, without military participation. It's the first ever political dialogue ever happened. So people say dialogues not happening in the country. No, that's wrong. We have meetings almost every day between different ethnic groups, between different actors. We're talking directly as a young, non-violent civil society actor. I can talk directly to the ethnic arms revolution leader. I can talk directly to the people on the ground or people. This has never happened in the country. So I think we should keep up doing this, get used to it, and be okay with different views and different visions. We have different takes. It has been 7 decades long struggle, and there is a mistrust between different actors, and all because the military rule was sustained in the past 3 decades, 7 decades. But now, for the first time in the country, that kind of political opportunity happened. We can say it's window period where we are shaping our own nation. So I think this is the way forward. It's already there. The political roadmap of the Myanmar resistance is it has 12 steps and it's already on 6 steps. It's already on the way, in the middle way. So we just have to keep going forward. And this revolution is not just about people, and we are also including the voices of the defectors, including the voices of the soldiers, not just outside, but also inside. The revolutions now listened to the people inside the military institution as well. We are listening to the wife. We are listening to their generation. What do they want? Because the future we are building right now is for everyone, including all these soldiers and their generations too. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Thinzar, let me direct this question to you, please. One of our viewers is asking how can support be best directed to civil society organizations in Myanmar? And how can the pitfalls for international actors be managed to avoid providing material assistance to resistance groups, which could put external actors in sensitive issues related to money laundering or providing material support? The Myanmar government has been calling for designating many of the armed groups terrorist groups. That's obviously absurd, and the West hasn't done that. Nonetheless, there are significant sensitivities about material support issues and financial transfer issues. Your thoughts, please, on how best, what are the best mechanisms to support civil society groups in Myanmar?
Thank you for this question. It's very important. And that's also many civil society inside the country also like you to know that they are still working on the ground, but maybe different identities. They are now low profile. Now they are changing their names, their way of acting on the ground. But I assure you that there are so many civil society still remain on the ground and they are operating in their own ways. And Myanmar is known as there are different way of working things on the ground. For sure, the human rights organizations and resistance-related civil society organization can remain inside country. For example, media and leading activist groups, they can't remain inside the country because they were so bold in the past 10 years, their names already there. But there's so many different charity groups, blood donation, different single mom house, all these service provider remain inside. And now their political, I would say, understanding is now getting higher. That means they are making sure the delivery of aids go directly to the people. And now we are seeing that there are different reports when the military weaponize the aids and also military confiscate the aids when the aids are sent through them. So what we've been advising is there are many civil society inside country. So talk to the civil society directly, how you can deliver effectively, and also talk to the civil society along the borders. There's so many border groups. Since long time ago, they have a tremendous experiences and on ground memories of how they could work. And now they are now operating in a large scale. So cross-border aids are really important. And still, so we need to advocate Thai government, India government to allow these cross-border humanitarian aids to go directly to the impacted communities. And at the same time, there's so many concerns from the different diplomatic community, how we can avoid, from the weaponizing of these aids from both sides and stuff. So I would say in the resistance group or in the revolution, these cross-border civil society, they work with principle. They work with, they may be Korean group, they may be Kachin group, but they are different civil society like Korean women organization, Korean human rights groups, where they make sure that deliveries of aids are going directly to the impacted civil society. We can't just generalize the Korean people are just all about like the resistance or the M pillar. No, there are many humanitarian and civil society, even in the one ethnic groups, they work differently. So I think that's how now people are being delivering aids informally for the right now. But if the government change the policy, then it's easier, especially pressuring the neighboring countries, Thailand and India. So it will get easier. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thinzar, for this thoughtful and detailed response. Thinzar, please, your concluding thoughts.
Thank you. So when we talk about Myanmar's issue, Myanmar's problems, impacting across our neighbor, also in the region, we must think of the root cause of the problems. For example, we had a 2008 constitution. We thought it was a political transition toward a better Myanmar, peaceful Myanmar, but we shouldn't forget that we had a continued civil war. I was protesting against the civil war within that 10-year long period. And we even had a genocide against Rohingya. Out of this whole scenario. So we must reflect now, like, what is the real political realities in the country? What should be this in the very beginning? So now the answer is federal democracy that people been asking, people been demanding in a large scale right now. So at the same time, there is a big questions about who is the dominant factor in the country, who is influencing the whole Myanmar political sector. I would say military, of course, state control many different infrastructure, but that does not mean that they are in power. I mean, they may be in power because the power, people may interpret the power come from the barrels of gangs. But in the long term, the generation seeing things, the power come from people itself. The power comes from the resistance, power comes from the revolution. So we should think of next 20 years, what the current generations are thinking right now and how it will shape the next 20 years. And I think that will give you more answer on the way you think of Myanmar. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very powerful words.